الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد, in our previous class we're reading what the author he mentioned rahimahullah ta'ala about the true means of happiness and success, and the greatest joy and delight in this life is by knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by knowing Him by His tawheed subhanahu wa ta'ala, by His lordship and His authority and command, and by His mercy and His kindness, and knowing that He alone is the creator and the provider and the sustainer of all things, and that He is the one who has given everything its life and shape and form, and is sustaining all of this existence, and that nothing happens except according to His wisdom and knowledge and with His permission, and knowing that Allah Azza wa Jalla, He has a life that is perfect, no deficiency whatsoever, and He's alive and He never dies. And then implementing that knowledge by putting one's faith and trust in Allah Azza wa Jalla, and relying upon Him in every aspect, and hoping for His reward and His help and His aid, and hoping that He would accept a person's efforts, and fearing Him likewise, fearing His punishment and fearing His anger, knowing Him from His signs in His book, and likewise His signs in His creation, and then complying to Him in obedience with love and submission and humbleness, and with compliance to His commandments sincerely and truthfully, and avoiding His prohibitions. In this manner a person, he will find happiness and joy, and he will find a paradise in this life before the hereafter. And some of the people of knowledge, they mentioned that في الدنيا جنة من لم يدخلها لم يدخل جنة الآخرة, that in this life there's a Jannah, that in this life there's a paradise. Whoever did not enter the paradise in this life, then he will not enter the paradise in the hereafter. And this is what they're referring to, the Jannah of knowledge of Allah Azza wa Jal, and the path that leads to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore a person's whole life should be dedicated to one thing, and that is seeking the pleasure of Allah and the home in the hereafter. And that which the author he mentioned in the previous class a number of times, in the last class specifically, he's referring to affairs that are actually derived from narrations, as we have seen from that from the means of completing and perfecting one's dedication and devotion to Allah is that he must make all of his love for the sake of Allah, and likewise his hatred and that which he dislikes for the sake of Allah, and everything he gives, it must be for the sake of Allah, and everything that he prohibits and refrains from and turns away from, it must be for the sake of Allah, referring to the narration that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Man ahabba lillahi wa abghadha lillah wa a'ta lillahi wa mana'a lillah faqad istakmala al-iman," that whoever loves for the sake of Allah and he hates for the sake of Allah, and whoever gives for the sake of Allah and he withholds for the sake of Allah, then he has completed his faith. So in this manner a person, his faith will be completed whenever all of his life is devoted to Allah Azza wa Jal. He loves whom he loves for the sake of Allah, for the sake of Allah. He dislikes whom he dislikes because of his religion and his deen, for the sake of Allah. That which he gives from his wealth or from his efforts and from his time and from his entire life is for the sake of Allah, based upon his love for Allah Azza wa Jal first and foremost. So this is what takes precedence. And the people he dislikes them, or the issues that he does not agree with or that he does not like, is for the sake of Allah. It's based upon his love for Allah Azza wa Jal. In this manner a person's faith will be completed, and whenever a person's faith is completed, he will be guided in the most perfect and best manner in this life and in the hereafter. And Allah, He says, يَهْدِيهِمْ رَبُّهُمْ بِإِيمَانِهِمْ, that their Lord guides them by way of their faith. So whenever a person's faith is strong, and whenever a person's faith is deeply rooted in his heart, it will be a means to guide him through this life, through every difficulty, guiding him to be grateful and to show thanks in times of prosperity, and guiding him to be patient and to be humble and surrender to the command of Allah in times of adversity and hardship and difficulty. His faith will guide him. His faith will guide him. And likewise, he was talking about the person. And this happiness here is whenever a person, his whole desire, his whole aim, and his whole goal is one thing. And that is the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jal. And as for the person who he has his main goal and his main purpose and his main aim in his life is not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you will find that his affair is in disarray, and he's in disorder, and he's never stable, and he has no stability and no security in his life. But as for the one who knows who he is, he knows that he's a slave, and he knows where he's going, returning to Allah, and he is preparing for that, and he hopes in the reward of Allah and the promise of Allah, and he's seeking the pleasure of Allah, and he makes this his priority, then you will find that regardless of his situation in life, he will have stability, and he will be firm, and he will be steadfast, and he will be upright on the straight path, again guided by his faith. And this likewise is in reference to a narration. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Man kanat al-akhiratu hammahu, man kanat al-akhiratu hammahu, ja'ala Allahu lahu shamlahu, wa ja'ala ghinahu fi qalbihi, wa atathu dunya wa hiya raghimah." The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, whoever makes the hereafter his main concern, man kanat al-akhiratu hammahu, and whoever made the hereafter his main concern. Some wordings of the narration, man kanat al-akhiratu niyatahu, and his intention. So his main concern, his main goal in his life is to reach the hereafter, meaning to seek the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jal, to live upon Al-Islam properly and correctly, and to die in that manner, seeking the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jal, and to remain steadfast upon the obedience of Allah, seeking His pleasure and hoping for His reward and fearing His punishment until death comes. Until death comes. The one who has this intention and this goal, this is what he's striving for. This is his main concern. His main concern is not money. His main concern is not status. His main concern is not a diploma. His main concern is not an occupation. His main concern is not a job. None of these. His main concern is not to be a doctor, not to be an engineer. His main concern is not to have a wife. His main concern is the pleasure of Allah. His main concern is to reach the Jannah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything else after that, whenever a person he has this intention, then everything else in his life will be steps and goals for him to reach that affair. Being a good father, this is not his main concern, but it's a means for him to reach the pleasure of Allah. Having an occupation that is good so he can provide for himself with halal means and support his family likewise, and also give in charity and spend in the path of Allah. All of this is good. It's not his main concern, but it's a means for him to reach his main goal. It's a means for him to reach his main goal, and the likes like this. So his main goal is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The one who is like this, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Jama'a lahu shamlahu," who put all of his affairs in order for him. He'll put all of his affairs in order for him. He'll line up and make everything facilitated for him. His life will come together. His life will come together easily for him. Things will fall into place in his advantage, with little effort from him. Things are just falling into place for him in his advantage. And he has a favor and a blessing from Allah Azza wa Jal. وَجَعَلَ غِنَاهُ فِي قَلْبِهِ, and he'll put his richness and his wealth in his heart. He will have contentment and satisfaction. غِنَى النَّفْس. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that true wealth is the wealth of the soul. When a person he's content with the decree of Allah, and he's satisfied with the command of Allah. Going back to that great narration that we say in the morning, and also it's from the hadith of Abbas radiyallahu anhu. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, ذَاقَ طَعْمَ الْإِيمَانِ مَنْ رَضِيَ بِاللَّهِ رَبًّا وَبِالْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا وَبِمُحَمَّدٍ صلى الله عليه وسلم رسولا. That the one who is pleased with Allah as his Lord, and with Islam as his way of life and deen, and with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as his messenger, then he will taste the sweetness of faith. Then he will taste the sweetness of faith. So then this is from the reward and the fruits of the beautiful intention, intending Allah Azza wa Jal, focusing one's life and his devotion directly into pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and making everything else in his life subsidiary, a means for that, a path for that. So then this is the fruit of that. جعل غناه في قلبه وأتته الدنيا وهي راغمة. And the worldly life will come to him submissively. The worldly life will come to him submissively. And it would be easy for him. He will not have to work hard. He will not have to tire himself out until he is completely exhausted and trying to earn $1 in his worldly affair. Doesn't mean he will not have to make effort. A person who, so long as he's alive, he will have to make effort. This life is full of turmoil and striving and hardship, and a person has to make effort. But the one who is sincere with Allah in this manner, Allah will facilitate for him. Allah will facilitate for him, and even things that may be considered major to many people, they'll be made easy for him. And his eyes will be something that's simple for him, and he will be able to deal with that and face it. In the eyes of others, maybe it will be a mountain in their face that they could never conquer or never get by. But because of his strong faith and determination, it will seem like nothing for him, and he will bear that, and he will deal with that, and he will keep on moving. And he'll keep on moving. On the other hand, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, وَمَا كَانَتِ الدُّنْيَا هَمَّهُ فَرَّقَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ شَمْلَهُ وَجَعَلَ فَقْرَهُ بَيْنَ عَيْنَيْهِ وَلَمْ يَأْتِهِ مِنَ الدُّنْيا إِلَّا مَا قُدِرَ لَهُ. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, and whoever his main concern is the worldly life, his main intention and his main goal is the worldly life, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make his affairs in disorder, and he make his everything in confusion. Nothing will come together for him. Nothing will come together for him. وَجَعَلَ فَقْرَهُ بَيْنَ عَيْنَيْهِ, and put his poverty in front of his eyes, meaning no matter how much he has from the worldly life, he'll never be satisfied. He'll never be content. He'll never be happy. And it will never be enough. And he will be miserable, even if he's from the most wealthy. Even if he has a great portion of the worldly life, he will not find peace in that. He will not find joy in that. He will not find contentment in that. He will want more. He will want more. It will be a means to punish him. It will be a means to disturb him. It will be a means to bother him. It will be a means for his downfall. وَلِيَعْذُ بِاللَّهِ. And then likewise the Prophet ﷺ, he said, and this worldly life will not come to him except for that which is decreed for him. And meaning in the first place, and this is the case for everybody. But to emphasize with this type of person, and he will work hard, and at the end of the day maybe he will not have any benefit whatsoever, or the benefit will be little to nothing. And then he will strive, but his affairs will never be facilitated for him. وَلِيَعْذُ بِاللَّهِ. So this goes back to the intention. And this is what he's telling us. And this last portion here that was leading up to where we're at now, is very important. He said, إِذَا عَرَفْتَ هَذِهِ الْمُقَدِّمَةِ فَاللَّذَّةُ التَّامَّةُ وَالْفَرَحُ وَالسُّرُورُ وَطِيبُ الْعَيْشِ وَالنَّعِيمُ إِنَّمَا هُوَ فِي مَعْرِفَةِ اللَّهِ وَتَوْحِيدِهِ وَالْأُنْسِ بِهِ وَالشَّوْقِ إِلَى لِقَائِهِ وَاجْتِمَاعِ الْقَلْبِ وَالْهَمِّ عَلَيْهِ. واجتماع القلب والهم عليه, that a person, his heart and his intention is gathered upon this affair, knowing Allah Azza wa Jal, knowing Allah and knowing Him by His Tawheed. And we know that the Tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal is two main types, and that is to know Him by way of knowledge, and knowing Him by His Lordship and His Rububiyyah, and knowing Him by His names and His attributes subhanahu wa ta'ala, and likewise knowing Him by complying to Him and worshipping Him in application by surrendering to Him in submission, and with the body parts by worshipping Him alone subhanahu wa ta'ala, desiring to meet Him and having comfort and finding joy in remembering Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And on the contrary, then the one who has the most bothersome and troubled life, فَإِنَّ أَنْكَرَ الْعَيْشِ عَيْشُ مَنْ قَلْبُهُ مُشَتَّتْ. And the one who has the worst life, the most problematic life, is the one whose heart is mushattat, and his heart is in disarray, and he doesn't have his intention and his aim focused on one thing, meaning on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rather, his concerns and his desires are all over the place. They're in disorder. They're in disarray. فَلَيْسَ لِقَلْبِهِ مُسْتَقَرٌ يَسْتَقِرُّ عِنْدَهُ وَلَا حَبِيبٌ يَأْوِي إِلَيْهِ وَيَسْكُنُ إِلَيْهِ. And so therefore his heart does not have any firm place of resolve, any to go to, and he's looking for this. Whenever he's desiring this, he'll go here, and then he'll go here, and he's all over the place, and he's lost in his life. And one day he wants this thing, and the next day he wants that thing, and in reality he doesn't know what he wants. He's just going with the wind, and whatever his whims desire, and whenever they're riled up in his body, then he goes with them. then he goes with him, and he following his desires. Then he'll never be happy. He will never be happy. After this, he said again to emphasize, فَحْرِصْ أَنْ يَكُونَ هَمُّكَ وَاحِدًا وَأَنْ يَكُونَ هُوَ اللَّهُ وَحْدَهُ فَهَذَا غَايَةُ سَعَادَةِ الْعَبْدِ. So then he says that you must be diligent to make your goal and your intention one, your main concern and your goal and your intention one, and that it should be Allah alone. And this is the peak, and this is the peak of happiness for a person. And the one who has made his goal like this, seeking the pleasure of Allah truthfully, then he will find Jannah in this life before the hereafter. Then he will find Jannah in this life before the hereafter. And then after that, he mentioned, and we read in our previous class, issues leading up to the topic of the delight of the eye. And he proceeding from here. So what he's saying now is that a person, he has to realize this reality, and that he is created, and he has a creator, and that he's returning to Allah Azza wa Jal, and he's going to be held accountable. And that we were created to worship Allah. We were not created to follow our desires. And the fundamental foundation and the basis of worship is love. The basis of worship, where it proceeds from, is love. Loving Allah Azza wa Jal. Loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what is required, to love Allah more than everything else. To love Allah more than everything else in this life. And to love everything for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. And to love whom Allah loves, and to love what Allah loves. And stemming from that is to love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam more than one loves his own soul, and more than one loves all of mankind in the creation, his son or his child, and his parents, and all of mankind, and this is the test in life. We're tested with these affairs here, and the point of examination comes whenever the heart desires and loves something that's in conflict with that which Allah loves and has commanded and ordered. At this time, there's a test. The one who shows preference to the command of Allah, then his love is pure and sincere. The one who shows preference to the command of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam over the command of his desires, over the command of his whims, over that which he loves, now this is a sign of the truthfulness of his claim to love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is the case here. قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ. Say to them, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if you truly love Allah, then follow me, and then Allah will love you. So the sign and the testimony of the truthfulness of a person's claim to love Allah is that he will obey Him, is that he will comply to His commandments, and he will obey Him, and he will avoid falling into disobedience by neglecting the obligations or by perpetrating the prohibitions. And likewise, the love of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So therefore, a person, he must show preference to the love of Allah. This is what comes first, and everything in his life must proceed from that. He must move based upon that. He moves based upon his love for Allah. This is something beloved to Allah, therefore I perform it and I do it and I partake in it. And this is something that is not beloved to Allah, so therefore I avoid it and stay away from it, and I do not partake in it. These are people who, what is apparent to me, they have great love for Allah, and they have honor and respect for the rights of Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So therefore I love them, and I take them as companions and friends. I take them as companions and friends. And these people here, what is clearly apparent to me from their speech and their action and their conduct, is that they are far away from that. That even if they claim to love Allah Azza wa Jal, I see from their actions that they are in opposition to that, apparently. That they're in opposition to that, apparently. So therefore I would detest them and dislike them and avoid them accordingly. And I will not take them as companions. Especially those who do not even believe in Allah, or for those who belie the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or claim that the Quran is not revelation. These people, he would never take them as allies or companions or friends. He will never take them as allies or companions or friends, because this is something that Allah, He does not love. Wallahu la yuhibbul kafirin. Allah, He does not love those who disbelieve. He does not love those who disbelieve. So this is the case here. So it's about the issue of love. Loving Allah and showing preference to that love. And then he mentioned likewise that there's a difference between loving something and between having the delight of one's eye in something. And then he moved on to the issue of the salat. So we want to just review this first so we can realize the relationship between the two. So now the issue is about salat. and the fact that the salat was made the delight of the eye of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why is that? Why is that? Why was the delight of his eye not made in something else? Allah made us the delight of his eye, but why? What is the secret there? The love of Allah. What is salat? The salat is, he mentioned here some of the wisdom behind the salat. What is it? It's the munajat. It's the munajat. It's the private consultation. It's a private conversation. It's the connectionship and relationship of a person directly with his Lord. So it's the direct connection of a person with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the greatest act of devotion and servitude and worship and humbleness. When a person is in salat, he's in the greatest action of devotion. And many aspects of worship are combined in the prayer.
He hung his hope with Allah.
And put all of his hope and his trust and faith and reliance is in Allah, and is humble and submissive and in compliance to his commandment and reciting his words and pondering over his book. And then after that, calling on him and praising him and asking for one's needs. This is the prayer. So the prayer, you hear the words of Allah and you call on Allah. Call on Allah with your state of being, hoping that He will respond to you. Call on Allah with your tongue by begging Him and asking for your needs. Calling on Allah by praising Him and mentioning His majesty and glory, hoping that He will accept, hoping that He will aid you, hoping that He will help you, hoping that He will have mercy on you, hoping that He will forgive you, hoping that He will facilitate for you, hoping that He will be with you in your life, wherever you may be, facilitating your affair and making it easy for you. So therefore the prayer now is the greatest connection between a person and Allah Azza wa Jal. That's why it's called salat. Some of the people have mentioned that the word that it's derived from, and he has a difference of opinion, but from what they mentioned, the sila. So a salat, a sila is the relationship, and the sila is something that connects something together. So this is the connection that connects us to Allah Azza wa Jal. That's why it's so dangerous to leave the prayer. بين الرجل وبين الشرك وبين الكفر ترك الصلاة. And because of his leaving his relationship, he's like cutting off that connection by leaving the prayer. وَلِيَذُ بِاللَّهِ الْأَحْدُ الَّذِي بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَهُمُ الصَّلَاةِ فَمَنْ تَرَكَهَا فَقَدْ كَفَرَ. The covenant that we have between us and between them, and is the prayer. So whoever leaves it, then he disbelieves. So this is because the salat is the connection that keeps us our relationship with Allah Azza wa Jalla good and strong. And whenever the prayer is better and performed more properly, then that relationship will be stronger, and the reward and the fruits of that prayer will be greater. And whenever the prayer is performed properly, then it will be the prayer that Allah mentions, Inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. That indeed the prayer, it prohibits a person from falling into evil and indecency. Into evil and indecency. That's whenever it's performed properly. So this is how he's leading up to the issue of the delight of the eye, because it's about love. So the one who truly loves Allah Azza wa Jal, then the prayer will be the greatest. It will be the delight of his eye, because at that time he's having a private consultation, a private talk and meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore, this is why it is so beloved to him, because at that time he leaves the dunya. A person he will leave the dunya. It will just be him and Allah. It will be him and Allah reading the words of Allah, and then him calling on Allah, praising Allah and glorifying Allah. So this is the issue here. So Ibn Qayyim he mentioned rahimahullah, وَمِمَّا يَنْبَغِي أَنْ يُعْلَمَ أَنَّ الصَّلَاةَ التي تقر بها العين ويستريح بها القلب هي التي تجمع ستة مشاهد. And what should be known and what must be known is that the prayer, which will be the delight of a person's eye and the means for the heart to find peace and ease and relaxation, is the prayer that gathers 6 affairs, 6 mashahid. Mashahid yani that it will gather these 6 points that the heart witnesses, and the heart will be present in these 6 manners. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, in his book Ighathatul Lahfan, Haqqullahi fi ta'ah bimura'ati sittati umur, and he mentioned these same things. that the right of Allah in all actions of obedience is by observing 6 affairs. The right of Allah. If a person wants to take himself into account, did he perform the right of Allah in any action of worship, especially the salah? Then he has to take himself to account in 6 points, and he mentioned these same 6 points. So these 6 points here, the one who recognizes them, understands them, realizes them, brings them to mind, and carries them in his heart, and witnesses them while he's praying, then in this manner the prayer will be the delight of his eye. But not only the prayer, and that's what he's mentioning here, because this is the topic, but in the other work he mentioned that this is the right of Allah in every action of obedience. And every action of obedience. So every action of obedience, a person, he must have these 6 affairs present, and for him to have truly performed the right of Allah in that action of obedience, whatever it may be, whether it's salat or whether it's fasting, or whether it's charity, or whether it's seeking knowledge, or whether it's the recitation of the Quran, whether it's giving advice, whatever the action of worship it may be, the right of Allah in that action of worship is performed by having all 6 of these affairs present in the heart and in the mind and in application at the time of performing that action of obedience. So he says here, al-mashhad al-awwal, al-ikhlas. Al-mashhad al-awwal, al-ikhlas. The first issue is al-ikhlas. He's calling them mashhad. And sometimes he will say the shuhud. What is intended is that the heart will be present. At this time. The heart brings to mind the issue about ikhlas. This is the first one. That this is something that will be witnessed in the heart of a person. That he will not be heedless about this. He will not be forgetful about this. He will not mix. He will not be negligent with regards to this. So the first issue is al-ikhlas. So he says, وهو أن يكون الحامل عليها والداعي إليها رغبة العبد في الله ومحبته له وطلب مرضاته والقرب منه والتودد إليه وامتثال أمره بحيث لا يكون الباعث له عليها حظا من حظوظ الدنيا البتة بل يأتي بها ابتغاء وجه ربه العالى محبة له وخوفا من عذابه وَرَجَاءً لِمَغْفِرَتِهِ وَثَوَابِهِ. So he says the first issue is that a person, and if he wants his prayer to be the delight of his eye, he must bring to mind and carry in his heart the issue of sincerity, purity of intention. He says, what does that mean? He says this means that the thing, that which is carrying him to perform the action, that which is carrying him to perform the salah, that which is calling him, the reason that is moving him to perform the salat is that he desires and he has his hope in Allah Azza wa Jal. That he ragbat al-abdi fillah. Al-ragba is like al-raja. Al-ragba is his desire and his hope. He's desiring and hoping for Allah, hoping for the reward with Allah Azza wa Jal. And likewise, the reason why he's praying, that which is carrying him to pray, his hope for Allah and his love for Allah, and seeking the pleasure of Allah, and seeking nearness to Allah, and trying to draw near to Allah, and by the means that are beloved to him, and complying to his commandment. He will not perform the prayer for any reason, any from the worldly life. And it will not be nothing is encouraging him to perform the prayer from the benefits of the worldly life ever. And he doesn't pray. Nothing is carrying him to pray. Nothing from the worldly life. Nothing from the worldly life is carrying him, or is an incentive for him, or is an encouragement for him to pray whatsoever. Nothing from the worldly life. He's only praying. The whole reason while he's praying, that which is carrying him to establish the prayer, is his hope in Allah, and his love for Allah, and his desire to have the pleasure of Allah, and to be near to him subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to comply to his commandment. This is the whole reason that carries him to perform it. This is called ikhlas. So his intention now in performing the prayer is for Allah alone, with hope and with love. He says, and then he says, whether he will come to the prayer hoping for the face of Allah the Most High, with love and with fear of his punishment, and hoping for his forgiveness and his reward. Hoping for his forgiveness and his reward. So this is the issue of al-ikhlas. This is how it occurs. So, meaning the reason that he is established in the prayer, that which carries him to do that is his hope in Allah, his desire for the pleasure of Allah, that he's hoping to be near to Allah and to fulfill the command of Allah, and he's doing this based upon love for Allah Azza wa Jal and out of fear of his punishment, and hoping for his forgiveness and his reward, and hoping for his forgiveness and reward. So this is the reality of al-ikhlas. It's gathered in these three affairs here: love and hope and fear. And these three affairs here, they're called muharrikat al-qulub. Muharrikat al-qulub. These three affairs here, love, al-mahabba, wal-khawf, wal-raja, they're called muharrikat al-qulub. And muharrikat, the things that move the heart. The things that move the heart. What is it? What moves the heart, and likewise in turn moves the person? Is love. A person, he goes for something because he loves it and likes it, and he stays away from something or turns away from something because he does not like it. He dislikes it, or he does not want it. So, and then if he loves something, he will hope to have it. So this hope to have that which he loves will carry him to work upon that path. If he loves something likewise, then he will be afraid of losing it, or afraid of missing out on that. So that will carry him as well, to push him to not do anything that could jeopardize that which he loves. Could jeopardize that which he loves. So these things, they come together. Whenever a person, he brings to mind these issues here, he's praying because he loves Allah. He's praying, hoping for the reward from Allah, hoping for the mercy and the forgiveness of Allah. He's praying out of fear of the punishment of Allah, and out of fear of his own shortcomings and faults and his sins and the likes like this at this time, and he has turned away from the desires of this life. So now his whole intention is focused on Allah Azza wa Jal. So this is called ikhlas, purity of intention. Whenever his love and devotion and his hope and his fear is directed to Allah alone, now there is purity of intention. When does the intention become corrupted? Whenever the heart is hoping for the reward from somebody besides Allah. So this could be major shirk or minor shirk. We will talk about now minor shirk. This person, he's praying now, but he beautifies his prayer, so somebody will say, MashaAllah, he has a beautiful prayer. Or somebody will say, MashaAllah, he knows how to pray good. Or somebody will say, MashaAllah, he has a good recitation. So then the heart at this time, the person who starts having this hope in his heart, hoping for that person to now notice him, now the intention is corrupted. And what happened to the ikhlas? The ikhlas is likewise corrupted. It's corrupted. How did it become corrupted? By wanting something, by hoping for somebody else, not Allah. So how will the heart become, how will the intention, how will the ikhlas come? By making that hope purely for the sake of Allah, not hoping for the people. Not hoping for the people to praise him or to reward him, or not afraid that the people will not like him, or will not give him something, and the likes like this. Rather making the hope and the fear for Allah alone. So now this is the purity of intention. This is the purity of intention. It happens in this manner, that a person, he will strengthen at the time of performing the action of worship. Here the salah, he will strengthen in his heart and bring to mind the issue of hoping for the reward of Allah, hoping in the meeting of Allah, hoping in the mercy of Allah, hoping for the pleasure of Allah, fearing the punishment of Allah, fearing the anger of Allah, fearing the foul outcome of his sins, and the likes like this, and then worshipping in this manner. Now his heart is not attached to the worldly life. Now his heart is attached to Allah alone. This is called purity of intention. This is called ikhlas. This is called ikhlas. So some of the people of Fadanas, they have mentioned an example from the Quran which clarifies a linguistic meaning of the word ikhlas in order to better understand the legislative meaning. Because Allah, He mentioned in a number of verses in His book the obligation of ikhlas. Allah lillahi ad-din al-khalis. That which is for Allah is the pure religion. Ad-Din al-Khalis. Ad-Din al-Khalis, the pure religion. So a person's religion, his actions of worship, they cannot be mixed up. They have to be purely for the sake of Allah. If it's not pure, then Allah, He will not accept it. It has come in the hadith of Abi Hurairah radiallahu anhu, it's a hadith Qudsi. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said that Allah, he said, أَنَا أَغْنَى الشُّرَكَاءِ عَنِ الشِّرْكِ أَنَا أَغْنَى الشُّرَكَاءِ عَنِ الشِّرْكِ I'm the one who is most free and no need whatsoever of any associate, of any partner. This is what Allah, He says, subhanahu wa ta'ala. أَنَا أَغْنَى الشُّرَكَاءِ عَنِ الشِّرْكِ I'm the most free and no need of any partner. مَنْ عَمِلَ عَمَلًا أَشْرَكَ مَعِي فِيهِ غَيْرِي تَرَكْتُهُ وَشِرْكَهُ Anybody who does an action and he associates any partners with me in that action, I will leave him and his partner. I will leave him and his partner. So the person who does an action of worship and it's not purely for the sake of Allah, Allah will leave that action and his partner. Allah, He will not accept it. Allah, He will not accept it. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the verse is in Surah Al-Nahl, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions وَإِنَّ لَكُمْ فِي الْأَنْعَامِ لَإِبْرَةً that indeed you have in the cattle a great lesson and an admonition. وَإِنَّ لَكُمْ فِي الْأَنْعَامِ لَعِبْرَةً نُسْقِيكُمْ مِمَّا فِي بُطُونِهِ مِنْ بَيْنِ فَرْثٍ وَدَمٍ لَبَنًا خَالِصًا سَائِغًا لِلشَّارِبِينَ Allah, He says subhanahu wa ta'ala, that indeed you have in the cattle you have great admonition and signs, lessons, and we give you to drink from that which is in their bellies, and it comes out between feces and blood, pure milk that is delicious and sweet for those who drink. So the people of Najd, they mentioned that inside the bellies of the cattle there are a number of things. From that, the feces and the blood, and also the milk. But whenever the milk comes out, it comes out between, and in the belly it's mixed. They're mixed. There's blood in there, there's feces in there, and there's milk in there. But whenever the milk comes out, it comes out labanan khalisan. It comes out pure milk. It's not mixed with a speck of feces, and not even a drop of blood. It comes out pure. It's not mixed whatsoever. This is a sign of the greatness of Allah. This is a sign of the power and the mercy of Allah Azza wa Jal, and He has the ability to do all things. If you try to go in there and get some milk, you can't get it. You have to take the means that Allah has decreed. The means that Allah has decreed. And whenever it comes out pure. It comes out pure, not mixed with any impurities whatsoever. So this is how the worship must be. The worship must be like that milk. It can't be mixed up. It can't have one speck of showing off or hoping for the reward from the worldly life or anything else. It has to be pure, sincerely, for the sake of Allah alone. For the sake of Allah alone. This is called ikhlas. And this would be the action that is considered khalis. Al-amal al-khalis. The one that's not mixed with any other hope or any other desire or any other want or any other intention or any other aim or any other goal. The only thing he wants from the action is the pleasure of Allah. This is called al-ikhlas. So the author, he's mentioning these points in very general and brief detail. Some of them he goes into more detail, but the last sentence here is very important. He says, بل يأتي بها ابتغاء وجه ربه الأعلى محبة له وخوفا من عذابه ورجاء لمغفرته وثوابه. So what does it mean to summarize, to do the action sincerely and purely for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal alone? And what does it mean to have al-ikhlas in the action? He says rather that a person, he must perform it hoping for the face of Allah, his Lord the Most High. And sincerity for Allah alone, based upon love for Allah and fear of His punishment, and hoping for His forgiveness and for His reward. Likewise, these three issues here, they're called muharrikat al-qulub. Also, these 3 points here, love and fear and hope, They're called Arkan At-Ta'abbud Al-Qalbiyya. Arkan At-Ta'abbud Al-Qalbiyya. They're the pillars of the worship of the heart. Just as, for example, Salah outwardly, it has pillars. What happens if a person, he left off a pillar of Salah? Would it be accepted? What happens, for example, likewise, fasting has pillars. Fasting has pillars, 2 pillars, right? If a person, he left off one of the pillars, would his fasting be legislative? Would it be performed properly? No, he would have to make that day up. He would have to make that day up if one of those pillars are violated. Likewise, the prayer, it has pillars as well. What would happen? His prayer would be invalidated. He would have to make that up. He would have to make that up. So every single action of worship, likewise, it has pillars of worship that the heart must perform. If he's praying, the heart must perform these actions. If he's giving charity, the heart must perform these actions. If he's reading the Quran, the heart must perform these actions. If he's being kind and obedient to his parents, the heart must perform these actions. The action of worship that's not performed like this is not true. It's not truly an action of worship. It will either be a custom or it will be an action of heedlessness or misguidance. So a person, whenever he's doing actions of worship, it's not only the body that's worshiping Allah, but rather what is most important before that. No doubt the actions of the body is important. The outward appearance of the action must be legislated likewise, but first and foremost, the heart must be alive and must be present. And a person, he must worship Allah Azza wa Jal with love and fear and hope. With love and fear and hope. The one who brings this to mind whenever he's worshiping Allah Azza wa Jal, in this manner he will begin to taste the sweetness of worship. He'll begin to taste the sweetness of worship. If the prayer is heavy for somebody, it's because he's not carrying these affairs in his heart. These pillars are deficient. If any action of worship is becoming heavy for him and hard for him and difficult for him and he just wants to hurry up and get finished with it, this is because he's not worshiping Allah with his heart. He's only worshiping with his body at this time. So that's why it becomes difficult and heavy. But whenever he brings these ideas to mind, first and foremost, loving Allah because He is providing for us all of the good that we have. He is our creator, He is our sustainer, He is our provider. Everything that we have from good in this life, in our worldly life and in our religion is all a blessing and a favor from Allah. Our eyes and our eyesight is a favor and blessing from Allah. He's providing for that out of His mercy. We did not do anything to deserve that or to earn that. We're not paying for that. We're not buying that. This is a favor from Allah. He's providing for us from His grace. And if Allah, He takes the eyesight away, no one can provide it again without His permission. And the ears and the health and the eyesight, this and the fact that the body parts, they function properly. And a person, he's able to move around and take care of his daily needs, and that him and his family are in a state of safety and security, and they're not living in fear and scared for their life or where their next meal is going to come from. All of these are favors and blessings for Allah Azza wa Jal. He's giving these blessings to us and providing with us with all of these good things so that we will realize that and we'll recognize that and love Him. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's drawing near to us by providing us all of these good things, calling us to love Him, calling us to obey Him, calling us to surrender to Him. So therefore the person, he remembers this affair. He remembers this affair whenever he's worshiping Allah, and then he will begin to hope for more of those blessings and for more of those favors and more of that goodness from Allah Azza wa Jal, and he will be afraid that they will be taken from him. He'll be afraid that they will be taken from him. He's hoping for the reward of Allah and the forgiveness of Allah, and afraid of the punishment of Allah Azza wa Jal. In this manner, a person, he can actualize the issue of sincerity and purity of intention. After this, the author, he mentions the issue of being truthful. The issue of being truthful and the action of worship. We take this, inshallah, to Yom al-Sabt, on Saturday, inshallah. هذا وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.